The printing press. When you hear that name, you probably think of something like this, which did eventually come after. But this thing right here is actually one of the most important inventions in history. It's arguably responsible for a lot of the things we take for granted today. And yeah, that includes the internet. In case you don't know what it is, the printing press was basically a machine that allowed for the mass production of books. It was invented by a guy named Johannes Gutenberg around the year 1440 in Germany. Before this, books were handwritten by monks or scribes, which was a painstakingly slow process that made books really expensive and kind of limited who had access to them. Because of this, only the elites could afford to buy books, meaning that most people couldn't read, and writing was limited to a very small percentage of the population. But then Gutenberg came along and invented the printing press, which worked by using movable type, ink, and a press mechanism to drastically speed up the production of books. This would end up changing the world in ways that Gutenberg probably never even imagined. Let's start with the immediate impact. As soon as the printing press was invented, the number of books being produced and distributed across Europe exploded. Between 1450 and 1500, more than twice as many books were printed than had been produced during the previous 1,000 years. And by 1500, there were around 10 million printed books in existence. Compared to the roughly 200,000 that had been produced before the printing press, that's a 50x increase in half a century. This explosion in written materials led to knowledge spreading way faster than it ever had before. This was especially true for scientific, political, and religious texts, which were often the main targets of printers looking to make a buck. For example, the invention of the printing press helped to make classical works of literature, philosophy, and science much more widely available. This, in turn, helped to fuel the Renaissance, which was partly a renewed interest in classical antiquity. It also helped scholars to easily share their work and build off of each other's ideas, which led to massive intellectual and artistic advancements across Europe. And if you've heard anything about the Protestant Reformation, you know that the printing press played a massive role in that too. You see, the printing press allowed Martin Luther's 95 Theses to go viral, rapidly spreading his ideas across Northern Europe and undermining the Catholic Church's control over religious knowledge. This would eventually lead to the Church being replaced as the main disseminator of information and ideas. In the long term, these effects would have huge global effects. Over the next century, literacy rates across Europe would increase from around 15% to 60%. The printing press also laid the foundation for the modern education system, which helped to spread knowledge and information to even more people. It also helped to lay the groundwork for mass communication and newspapers, which would eventually evolve into the internet and social media. We should also mention that the printing press fundamentally changed how information spreads and is received. Before the printing press, most people in Europe were a part of an oral culture where information and stories were shared out loud. The printing press shifted this to a print culture, which valued written texts and books. This change had a profound effect on society and helped to usher in an age of literacy and intellectualism. And finally, it's important to mention that the printing press had an effect on free speech and democracy. By making information and ideas more widely available, the printing press helped to empower the general public and challenge the authority of the elites. This had a ripple effect that eventually led to more democratic forms of government and the protection of free speech and intellectual freedom. So yeah, the printing press was a pretty big deal. While it didn't look like this at first, it was safe to say that it helped to pave the way for the internet and our modern world.